was around 11 or 13 at the time. I would always love to go into the woods to just have some fun with my cousins, but sometimes I would stay in my backyard. Sometime in the middle of June that year, something happened that would change the way that I saw those woods. I was attempting to stay the night in my treehouse. It must have been only a few hours until dawn at the time. The treehouse is located at the edge of the woods, and I was alone at the time, or so I thought. I climbed into the treehouse and looked out the window. It was then that I realized I was pretty thirsty, so I decided to go down and walk towards my house. Around that time, I got this feeling that someone or something was watching me. I ignored it and thought it was at most some wild animal. I made it into my house and grabbed my bottle, which had some Yoo-hoo in it, which was my favorite drink as a child. As I exited the house, I noticed that our old blonde lab had followed me. He was a good dog. I gave him a quick pet, then went on my way to the treehouse. As I entered the treehouse, I looked out the window, glancing back in the direction of my dog. I noticed that he was no longer watching me. He was instead staring into one particular part of the woods. I'd never seen my dog do that before. If there was something that piqued his interest, he would go check it out. I'd never seen him just stay still like that, as if he was scared. But then he began to make this low, deep growl. I called out to him, "Rocky, what do you see, boy?" He turned to look up at me, but only for a split second, then went right back to staring at that spot in the woods. It started to rain and thunder, but along with those sounds came another, a sort of humming that was coming from my right. Immediately, I felt scared, chilled to the bone. I looked out the window that was facing the direction of that sound. I saw it, something that horrified me, that didn't make sense. A creature that I'd never seen or heard of before. It was standing at the forest floor and was a little too close to the treehouse. It was big, skinny, brown. It was looking up at my treehouse with reddish-brown eyes. I thought to myself, do I run to the house, or do I stay up here? I crouched beneath the window so that it could not see me, and I decided to stay until morning. The next day, I hurried down the treehouse and began to run as fast as I could out of the woods. After that incident, I didn't want to go into the woods ever again, because whatever that thing was could still be lurking out there, waiting for its next meal.
To fully appreciate the background of this story, I need to give you information regarding the place where I live. You see, we were in a temporary living situation. Our house had burned to the ground, and we lost everything. Fortunately, my parents had insurance, and they put us in a temporary living position. As an only child, I had my own room, and my parents had a separate room. I was about 15 at the time, and that place always gave me the creeps. I don't think a day would go by where I couldn't find myself terrified in that area. The place itself wasn't really bad, but the situation and the location were not that great. But still, we knew it wouldn't last forever, so we just didn't get too comfortable. I did get a free complimentary breakfast before going to school, and also the clerk or the admin who worked behind the counter of the motel was quite nice, and whenever I got back from school, he was always on shift. He would try to strike conversation with me. Now, because we are living in a motel, he obviously has the key, and so he can get into our room. The thought of it was a little creepy for me, so I started putting the Do Not Disturb sign up all the time. My parents kept telling me to take it off because otherwise our room wouldn't be cleaned, which, to be fair, was necessary. A few weeks have come to pass, and I still didn't feel really good about the place. There was just something about it that gave me the creeps. I remember it was a Wednesday. I tended to my homework in the morning and ate a few bits for breakfast and plowed through as much as I could. I would think up excuses if I didn't have enough time to finish. Now, the way this is set up is that the banquet hall is right after the front desk, and from where I was sitting, I had a clear view of the creeper guy. So he got 2 guests, talked to them, and when they left, he left too. I assumed that it was something related to that family, and that his business was needed elsewhere, but I was wrong. I never saw him return. When I returned to my room to grab some books, I suddenly felt really strange. I stood there for some time, and I swear I could hear someone breathing. It was the first time in my life I had felt true fear, and panic engulfed me. I stood there, panicking, not knowing what to do. I looked at my wristwatch and realized that time was running out and that I had to leave soon. Otherwise, I wouldn't catch my bus and reach school in time. So full of trepidation that I crept to the closet and swung open the closet door, only to be met with the strange guy. I jumped and let out a loud scream, and he screamed as well. I was furious. I wasn't sure what he was doing in the room, but I was very, very upset. I screamed for my parents, who ran into my room, and screamed at the guy who was still in the closet. My dad started yelling at him and asked what he was doing spying on a 14-year-old girl, to which he had no reply. After 10 minutes of the onslaught of words from my father, he got up from his crouched position, apologized to my father, and walked back to his front counter, this time with a cue lagging behind. My dad told me to go to school, so I did. When I came back, the guy was gone. He never came back to work, and my dad would refuse to tell what happened that day. But I have a good idea that my dad gave him more than just a piece of his mind. So, creepy peeping Tom that was in my closet, let's not meet again. I really hope that you didn't see more than I wanted you to, weirdo.